Hi, I'm Paul White, and I've been a professional wrestler for over 30 years. And I know every time I step in the ring, a
Paul
concussion
White
is
is
possible.
getting
That's why I protect
double
my
value
brain
for
and
his
body
ad.
with Amino Heal. Go to AminoHeal.com
Okay, sorry,
and
I'm
place
skipping
your...
the ad.
Hi, I'm
No,
Paul White, and I've been a
again?
professional wrestler for over 30 years.
Okay.
And I know every time I
Done.
step in the ring,
I'm
a
disappearing for
concussion
now.
is
Go.
possible.
Enjoy.
So these guys want to talk about J.K. Rowling? Is that so? What's going on with that? What do you want to know?
She's had a pretty controversial past. I just want to know, like, what are your thoughts on it? And, like, do you still like her work despite her bigoted opinions?
So let's get specific, though. Let's define bigoted opinions. What opinions are bigoted? We're going to treat this as a thought experiment. I'm not going to say what's right or wrong or what way to think. The whole point is to learn how to think, not what to think.
Yeah.
So when you say bigot, you're starting with the conclusion that, given her bigoted opinions.
Yeah.
So first,
her,
let's start with, does she have bigoted opinions? So when you say bigoted opinions,
She has had a history of being extremely transphobic, I've heard.
hey, you've heard. So what? Can you give me an example?
If you look at her Twitter, I think you could see a few things. If you want, I could try and find
see
something.
if you can find one.
So, one of these tweets that she came out with in 2019, she said, "Dress however you please, call yourself whatever you like, sleep with any consenting adult who will have you live your best life in peace and security, but force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real."
So you find that bigoted? What do you find about
It
bigoted
was
in there?
it was deemed transphobic. Like, I myself,
Do you find that transphobic yourself?
I don't really have an opinion on it, but I'm just going with what a lot of other people have said.
So let's pause there. Let's not go with what other people are saying. Let's try and learn how to critically think. So let's analyze the tweet ourselves. So that statement, do you see anything problematic? Disregarding other people's opinions.
She did try and...
That's actually the hardest thing right there. Disregarding other people's opinions, especially for an impressionable youth.
Of people.
Where does she do that? Can you read that?
But force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real.
So when I hear that, I'm interpreting that as meaning if a woman says that, saying that there's a difference between men and female.
I'm going to let this play. So for those of you who haven't seen it,
I think that's what she's
also while everyone
saying
trickles in.
Attacking someone for stating that sex is real.
Taylor Swift
That
says
is exactly what she's saying.
Is that transphobic to you?
So, to me, no. Stating that sex is real is not transphobic. It's just a fact of life. It exists.
one that has
So is
become
there anything you
controversial.
disagree with in that tweet?
In that tweet, I can't really see anything that I myself disagree with, but I can see why some people would think, oh, this is offensive. We can't have that here or something, because
Sure.
there's an apology tweet.
Let's read that. What did she say there? I haven't read that.
I respect
I
every
need to know if he
trans
actually
person's
hadn't
right
read
to
that.
live
I think he did.
any way that feels authentic and comfortable to them. I'd march with you if you were discriminated against on the basis of being trans. At the same time, my life has been shaped by being female. I do not believe it is hateful to say so.
You see anything problematic there?
She's apologizing, so
Is
no, not really. If I could read it again.
It sounds like a very similar statement as what she was just saying. She's basically saying, like, I have nothing, to me, this is what I interpret it as, I have nothing against someone being trans.
Exactly.
Live your life, but you just don't get to impose on you can live how you want, I can live how I want.
Yeah,
And let's all,
exactly.
So I guess now that we're looking at it like, oh, there's not much difference between me or her, do you think it's fair that she's being attacked by a large group of people and people are calling her, like you said at the beginning of this conversation, you said, given the fact that J.K. Rowling is transphobic, how do you feel about Harry Potter? Now, retroactively looking at that statement, do you think that was the best way to phrase?
No, I feel like an idiot now.
It's okay though, but this is why we do this, to learn.
Yeah.
How to think.
That's the best punchline in a good way ever. Now, I was talking with Warren offset, behind stage. Offline is the word. And I said, like, I'm going to say this, and I'll say it before you come on because I don't, we're still talking about a kid, and this teacher obviously has the utmost respect for the kid, and there's no but to that. I haven't noticed that many people online saying, what a woke kid. Look at this. This is like what happens when your brain goes from woke to awaken. People have been, very understanding of a kid who can actually admit that they were wrong and change their mind in real time. And it takes an amazing amount of maturity. And so anybody who's even inclined to judge the kid for having had these peer pressure, social pressure predispositions, I think you're off base, and I think you have to look at this kid. He's a kid, he's 18 years old, as someone with an open mind who could figure things out and in real time admit that they were wrong. It's an amazing thing to admit that you made a mistake. It's very hard. It's especially hard for kids, and it's especially hard for adults. And it also takes willingness. And now, I was joking around with Warren. He's going to come on in a few seconds. I'll just give a good intro and a long-winded one, where I was saying, like, he's a very, very patient man. And like, I look at him and I'm saying, like, I'm imputing my own irritability, my own, not short temper, but frustration. I'm not the most patient person in the world. And I'm looking at him and I'm saying, is he struggling to remain calm, or is he genuinely a calm and understanding person? And in as much as I've discussed with him, seems genuine. But I come to my own reflection and I say, I'm not that patient anymore. I say that though, because I deal with adults typically on a day in and day out basis, and adults don't get the same benefit of the doubt in terms of treatment, walking them through their stupidity, walking them through their ignorance, as a kid who is developing and is supposed to be guided as to how to think and learn on their own. And so when you get videos like this one, where I am not going to be very patient with these fellas.
Hi everyone, Randy here with Marty Penn.
Randy Bissonneau. I said I was going to play this one because this is Canadian politics that has nothing to do with Warren Smith or the incident. But I just said, like, I'm not patient with Bissonneau anymore, or these adults who should know better.
Roundtable.
For those of you who don't know, there's controversy out of Alberta that Danielle Smith, the new premier, is passing legislation, transphobic legislation. And I do this thought experiment with anyone with an open mind, not with scoundrels like these people. What's transphobic about it? Well, apparently it wants to increase or set an age limit for surgeries and hormone therapy. Apparently it wants to make it mandatory that kids can't socially transition at school without the knowledge of their parents. Controversial stuff.
Organizations representing the trans community and the 2S LGBTQ plus community here in Alberta. And so...
He forgot the IA. In Canada, it's 2S LGBTQIA plus. This guy also, on the right, I say this like glib, doesn't have pronouns in his bio. I thought that was a faux pas for adults.
Important meeting.
Yeah.
Unfortunate that we have to have this in face of Danielle Smith's horrendous policy recommendations, suggestions.
Recommendations that kids can't have surgery until
Tell us why this is so terrifying, and what was your main message today at the meeting?
Yeah, well, this is a direct attack on trans people in this province.
Direct attack.
Youth in this province. But we know that it doesn't end here, that this is an attack on all human rights, and we are all impacted by this. And
I'm not playing the rest of this. I'll give everybody the tweets. You cannot blame young, impressionable youth, developing adults, when they're bombarded with this crap day in and day out. They're not taught how to think. They're given the conclusions of what to think. And Warren Smith, in real time, I think the video is a little bit longer than the 4-minute edited down. He did it. It's amazing. And the world needs more teachers like Warren, who we're going to get to know now. And if I see anybody in the chat complaining that, why are you talking about his childhood? First of all, the man is very young. He's still a child in my books. We're doing it because I need to understand the person. All right, so with that said, everybody, you know the standard things. Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, David Frei. Hey, someone else told me something very interesting about my name. I forget what it was. It doesn't matter. We're going to end on YouTube as per usual. Head over to Rumble exclusively. Maybe if there's time, an after party on locals. And we're doing an off hour because it's Super Bowl Sunday. I don't care about the Super Bowl. I don't have my best friend in Florida and his parents, where I always used to watch it religiously every year. That was the best Sunday of the year. But my parents are down here now, and I'm going to go watch the Super Bowl with my parents so we can have an amazing evening. And it's like the trauma of being Canadian. I was like, hey, Mom, do you guys get the American commercials down here? We're in America. They get the good commercials. We don't have to watch Canadian Tire, crappy Canadian commercials instead of what everyone watches the Super Bowl or Taylor Swift. I'm joking. Commercials. Okay, this has been a longer intro than I wanted or intended. Warren, are you ready? Thumb up. Booyah. Here we go. Sir, how goes the battle?
It's actually going very well, I think, all things considered. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, first of all, thank you for. Some people are scared of me on social media, so thank you for accepting the invitation. Like, I'm going to ask you this question before we get into childhood. You are sincerely a calm and composed individual on a daily basis. You don't like flip out and you're not a you're not erratically behaved. Like you are the way you appear to be in real life.
I believe I am, yes. But that'd
All
be, yeah, as far as I can tell.
30,000 foot overview. And I'm going to just double check the audios, but 30,000 foot overview for those who, well, now everybody's seen the video, but for those who don't know who you are.
Who I am? I am a teacher with a background in filmmaking. I studied movie producing and screenwriting in undergrad at UNC School of the Arts, and then I worked in Hollywood for a while. Worked as a videographer, freelancer as well, and left LA after a few years and realized, I don't, it's not really the world for me. And I ended up going to graduate school in Boston at Emerson College to get my MFA in videography and filmmaking, same subject really, and started teaching while I was at Emerson College. Teaching assistant, then started teaching some professional studies classes, and then became a high school teacher after that.
It's funny, the range of emotions I just went through when you said you went to Hollywood, and I'm like, oh no, and then it's like, when I left, it's like the that's good, that's bad Homer Simpson with the frozen yogurt.
Right.
36 years old, born and raised in the
North
East
Carolina.
Coast.
Yeah.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
May I, how many, everybody's going to get frustrated. How many siblings?
I have one brother.
Older?
Younger. I have
One
a younger brother. Yes.
Childhood growing up in North Carolina, you play golf. Is it a beautiful childhood?
I don't play golf. It was a very beautiful childhood. We grew up in the mountains outside Asheville, North Carolina, in the woods, in a cabin that my dad built by himself. My parents were both professors, and I couldn't have imagined a better childhood at all.
Both of your parents are professors.
Art professors. My dad is retired now. He taught wood design, and my mom taught metals design, jewelry design. Yeah.
And so north of Asheville, is this what they call the Smoky Mountains? Is not in North Carolina, is it?
The Appalachian Mountains. So they call it the Blue Ridge Mountains. Is what
Blue
they
Ridge
call
Mountains.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's where the intro scene to Donnie Darko was shot, if I'm not mistaken.
It's like Last of the Mohicans was filmed there. They actually filmed the first Hunger Games in Asheville.
Oh,
But,
cool.
yeah,
Asheville was rated one of the most livable cities in America. It was one of the places we were looking.
Highest per capita breweries for beer, if you're a beer fan, and so it's a cool city. Yeah.
And so, when you say you grew up in a log cabin, was that the country place,
Yeah.
or was that the main residence?
We would, because my parents were teachers, they both taught at East Carolina University. We would spend every summer out on this. They bought this little spot in the woods before I was born, and my dad cleared it and then built this all by himself, like literally by himself. It's hard for people to wrap their heads around that, but that is the case. And so when people ask me, where'd you grow up? It's easier than saying on the East Coast in the winter, and on the eastern part in the winter, and then the summers we go in the mountains, because my heart is really in the mountains still to this day. So now when I go down for Christmas, I'm in the mountains. There's no family left in Greenville. Everybody's there. So the bulk of my childhood, I would say, was there.
Parents still married?
Yeah.
How many? That's got to be 50 years.
Yeah.
That's okay. And religious upbringing, or not at all?
That's an interesting story. That's really interesting, because my mom used to try and take us to church, and I think she did it because she grew up in a very religious household, and she felt like that's what you need to do as a mom. And it never ended up becoming a weekly thing. My dad never went. My dad grew up in Hollywood, and he's a character, so it didn't stick for her. Later in life, I did become more religious, and I would consider myself a Christian, and I was just having an interesting conversation with my mom recently, where I ended up conducting a little thought experiment. But I was like talking to her about Christianity. And I just met this girl who I'd started dating, and I was like, "Yeah, she's a Christian. It's really cool." And she's like, "Oh, why is that important? Why is that a good thing?" And I was like, "Well, I know that that you don't put much stock in this. Like, so if you were to ask her, do you believe in God?" She would kind of give a response for something like, I think I think it's good to believe in God, but Christians, they've started a lot of wars today, and they just seem to think they're better than everyone else. And I would break that down, and I would get
Hold on.
specific.
Your mother said this?
My mother was saying this,
And
yeah.
I say this without judgment because it's one of the I'd say like one of the classic arguments that a lot of people have been killed in the name of religion.
Right.
And then even when you cite World War II, well, they say, well, Hitler was driven by some religious motive against the Jews, although he didn't only try to exterminate the Jews. And then you look at Stalinism, communism, Maoism, which was a-religious or sacrilegious, would be sacrilegious.
Yeah, it was a perfect example of I guess that's where I kind of got all this. Doing the Socratic method was applying it to these conversations with my family often. So in that instance, I said, she said, well, because Christians start wars, can you give me an example? Like, what wars are currently going on that were started by Christians? Like, are you talking about like Hamas fighting the Jews? Like, I don't understand what you. And then she crumbles with it, and she goes, "Well, I just don't want to talk about this." Blah blah. And that's often how those conversations usually go.
With an adult who's already their brains are already wired, so it's like the cognitive dissonance. They can't unwire it or dewire like a kid can, or
That's
rewire in real time.
Yeah, because that student in that video, he just literally said what came to his mind in a very honest manner. And that's why the conversation flowed so well. And like he was able to, I think it's one of the reasons it resonates so well. And then I was even talking to my mom pretty recently. And I was like, Mom, we used to have these conversations all the time. But when I start asking you these questions, she says it she says, I feel attacked when you start. I feel like you're cornering me. And like, I'm just asking questions. So I'm not, she calls it bullying me in those senses where I'm like, I'm doing nothing different than what you saw in that video. But if you were as gracious as that kid, then it would be a very similar interaction. And you wouldn't. There's no reason to feel like I'm bullying you or anything.
No, they might be getting cornered by logic. I mean, at the end of the day, logic will corner you, but by math and not by force, or by logic and not by force.
Right.
And then I think like when they say the classic examples of religious wars, the go-to are the Crusades, and I think a lot of people are even historically not illiterate, but largely naive as to the history, origin, and what the Crusades were and in response to. But that's a subject.
Yeah. I'll say in that is that anything can be taken to an extreme. Any religion can be taken to an extreme. So that's not an argument to disprove the value of any religion, I feel. And I never thought I'd be asked that question. So good on you. That's pretty, like I
haven't even scratched the surface yet.
Okay, go for it. I probably should have taken the route of like, oh, that's a too complicated question, but because it is such a very difficult question to answer. It's more something along the lines, I like to live as though God exists, but it would take us a while to dissect it. So I would just say, yeah, I do think there is more to this life than what we see.
And I was going to say, like, people say I'm not religious. So I have discovered as you get older, something will substitute for the religion. So if you don't believe in Jesus or Christ or the Talmud, Talmud's probably not the best example, but Judaism, if you don't believe in something, as per the quintessential three religions, something else is going to substitute for that deep human need, and it will either be it'll be some form of cultism to replace it. I think what we're witnessing right now, especially as relates to the whole trans discussion, is religious tendencies manifesting through politics, and politics, I think, has become the new religion, if it hasn't always been. Okay, and you see, I mean, look, all the thought experiments with your mother and your father, you still get along with them, you talk to them.
Oh yeah,
okay.
We're very close. I love and she keeps me balanced as well. It's good to have someone challenge you on these things. It absolutely keeps me balanced, and I think it's been an eye opener for her as well, seeing how, I mean, I never expected this, but seeing how far that video resonated, and then because in her mind, when she watches it, to her credit, she's like, there's nothing wrong with it. Why would anyone have an issue? Why would you be worried about anything? Why would you be worried about your job or social ramifications? I don't think she fully understands the intensity of those who do have a presupposition about that topic, that there's already people that are so entrenched on it that they won't change their mind on, regardless of what evidence is presented.
Well, we'll get into the viral video stuff just because there's some what's the word, like common thread to everything that goes viral. Yes. But No, your mom, I guess, nobody who's not living in the current era right now can understand the social pressures as to what can make that video potentially a liability. I mean, it's wild that a patient, thoughtful, analytic teacher walking a student through a real-time experiment can be controversial because of the conclusion to which the student came, which defies the orthodoxy of the time, which is J.K. Any other conclusion, you've done the math wrong. What was I about to say here? We'll end this. We're going to end this on YouTube, people, and it doesn't change anything on our end, Warren. We're going to carry this on, speaking of respecting free speech and everything, on Rumble. So I'm going to give everybody the link one more time.
I cut you off. Sorry about that. You're asking about like family being close, but we're very close. Absolutely.
No, that's fantastic. And like it's funny. So link to Rumble, and I'll end with this anecdote. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. Dad's a lawyer. I was a lawyer. I'm still a lawyer, but not practicing. I'm not licensed in Quebec. Brother's a lawyer. Sister's a lawyer. Other brother's a lawyer. There's one who's not. Our Friday night dinners were the exact same Socratic method, but shouting matches. So Dad's not sitting around like walking us through. It's like a different tactic, but we arrived at the same conclusions, which is think critically, think independently, and always challenge your own foregone conclusions. To be continued on Rumble, people. We are ending on YouTube. 3, 2, 1.